My name is Dave Douglas, Growers, and I'm the Executive Director of Literacy Link Niagara, the regional literacy network in the Niagara region. I've been there for about 14 years, so I have a long history of not-for-profit management and not-for-profit involvement. It goes back closer to 35. So I also have a small business. So in terms of where I'm coming from in this presentation, I'm sort of gathering up my experience over the last 35 years and sort of trying to encapsulate this in an hour and 15 minutes. So what you need to understand from the information I'm presenting you today, this is not exactly the way I would present it. What I would typically do is have everyone introduce themselves and identify some sort of learning outcome or something they'd really like to leave with. But guess what? In an hour and 15 minutes, we don't have that luxury. I've also got some exercises built in here, which we're going to do a real Reader's Digest condensed version of just to get through. But to let you know that what I'm going to present to you in the next, how many slides do we have, folks? Quite a number. 11 pages worth is what I typically teach at the college in Niagara College in a postgraduate event management class where volunteer management and staff management is one of about 14 classes delivered over a one-year program. It usually takes about 45 hours to teach. So before I say anything else, we should probably get started. Is that a good idea? So we can, at least we'll be able to touch on all the components today. My lovely assistant here for the first part is Ashley Hope. Ashley is a colleague of mine from Literacy Link Niagara and a former student of the event management grad program. So take it away there. Okay, first question. Who in this room has a dedicated human resource professional in your organization that looks after all of these HR needs for you? Anyone? Are you fortunate enough?
Oh yeah, me.
You, me.
It's
Yeah.
me.
I'm the one
And you.
responsible.
Anyone else who has someone else? Yes. Who do you have? Where do you work?
Oh, myself?
Yes.
Sheridan College. So it's
Okay,
college.
large enough organization to have its own HR department. Way to go. Same. Okay. For the rest of us, including small business,
Small business.
yeah, you're it, right? I remember getting hired in '86. I went to the Kidney Foundation in '86. My first paid job in not-for-profit management. And they said, what we need for this, or what kind of position this is a generalist position. Love that term. In other words, generally, everything falls on your lap, right? You have to know a little bit about public relations, a little bit about hiring, a little bit about everything. Because there is no one else to delegate to. Sad reality, but aren't good at then knowing a little bit about everything, because we have to. So that's sort of also the position I've taken with this presentation, is to assume that most of you end up doing most of your own HR. So a number of years ago, not yet. A number of years ago, Literacy Link had a project, and one of the things we did was professional development and training for other regional literacy networks. And one of the areas was HR management. And we brought in some experts on a competency-based approach to hiring. This stuff connected with me because I thought it was an easier way to do it. It made sense. It was more transferable, saved me time. And so I've been using the competency-based approach since about 2002 and teaching components of it and helping organizations gain capacity in that area so that they can do this themselves. So I'll walk you through this process and see if you think it doesn't make sense. Okay? Please stop me if I'm going too quickly or I'm not making any sense at all, and I'll answer your questions. Okay? And hopefully we'll have time at the end for questions as well. Okay, let's take it away. Well, human resources always gets a bad rap. You know, if you ever look at the Gilbert cartoons or talk to anyone who may be in HR, there's a huge public relations issue there with managing staff. They often get a bad rap, and I don't know if you can read what this message says at the bottom. Good morning, Human Resources. How may I demean you? Because often HR gets a bad rap that, oh, they're the folks that do the performance reviews, that, tell me I'm not going to get a raise. I'm taking more of a much more positive approach with this to say HR management can not only be a more efficient process than perhaps we've used in the past, but it's also a very positive process. I have another one on the next one. The HR manager is saying to the, guess he's some kind of pirate, currently we've got nothing in plundering. Would you consider something in human resources? And certainly over this economic downturn, there's been a lot of people who have bad experience with HR. So this is a way to hopefully make a positive experience for you and your folks. Okay, we've got a little cartoon here. Hopefully the sound will work for us. As high as it'll go, Ash. It's slow.
Is it not caption? Is it captioned at all?
No, did you click?
Click that, but yes.
My dream is to one day become a regular employee.
My dream is to eat candy and poop emerald. The difference is that I'm halfway successful.
He said he wants to eat candy and poop emeralds, but at least he's halfway there.
Lately, every person I deal with seems to disappoint me. Every meeting starts late, every answer is misleading, every deadline...
I'm just going to start it again.
Okay.
My dream is to one day become a regular employee.
My dream is to eat candy and poop emeralds. The difference is that I'm halfway successful.
Lately, every person I deal with seems to disappoint me. Every meeting starts late, every answer is misleading, every deadline is ignored, and all work is shoddily done. I guess what I'm saying is that today, I need some empathy.
You are totally blocking my view of the wall.
Often the negative view of HR. Well, thanks a lot. I'm very busy. Can you leave my office, okay? So let us move on to the presentation and talk about a competency-based approach to human resource management. It's slow, isn't it?
Just a little.
So I'll just start. It's coming back. Okay, awesome. My belief is that a competency-based approach can reduce time, provide more consistency in terms of how you manage your human resources and between jobs. It ensures better employee fit to the job and allows for more flexibility as jobs change. It also helps identify training needs. I'm going to be running back here, so what we're going to do in the next hour, we probably only have an hour left at this point, is to understand the meaning of competency, look at typical elements of a human resources cycle. Critical thing there is a typical cycle. There is no one standard HR management cycle. I've pulled out 5 components to help walk you through that process. And we're hopefully by the end of this hour, you will be aware of a simple model for developing competency-based job descriptions, for conducting recruitment, selection, and performance review based on competencies. And I will be providing you with some tools to do that. Okay, let's see what competencies are. The official definition here is the ability to use knowledge, understanding, practical and thinking skills to perform effectively. So we're talking about the relevant experience, personal attributes, credentials as well that a person brings to the job. I have a list of competencies in this package I've given you. I'm just going to ask you to look at it for a moment and get comfortable with the whole concept of competencies. It should be the first document at the back. This particular list, because it's not the definitive list in the world, it is a list, happens to break things into managing people and things, communication, research, helping competencies, detail-oriented competencies, accomplishment competencies, and the overall really important component of personal attribute. Someone who's honest, someone who's prompt, someone who has strong interpersonal skills. What they bring to the job, what they bring with them to the job. Okay, so there's your competency list. It is not definitive. What you need to know is if you do a search for competency list, you will come up with thousands. And some organizations, typically larger organizations, will put these in a book. And they will also level them. Like essential skills, they will level them according to whether this is a high detail-oriented job or a low detail-oriented job, or fill in the blank with any other competency you can think of. I have shortened, which is probably a 14-step process in the HR policy, into 5, just for our purposes today. Starting with, the first thing we do is gap analysis, planning for HR, followed by recruitment and the selection process. Recruitment being its own process of advertising, posting, getting the word out. Then the whole selection process, the interviews, the meetings, the testing that needs to take place, followed by when that decision has finally been made and you've negotiated with your new staff person, moving on to orientation and training, and then ongoing monitoring, the discipline to dismissal process that you need to have in place for your organizations, and finally performance review, at which point, at the end of the performance review, you usually have data that then feeds again into the gap analysis and planning piece. Now that we've reviewed the job and the staff have reviewed the job, and perhaps I've asked other people about the competencies needed for the job, it's time to start all over again. Make sense? But that's a very, very short version of, as you know, what tends to be an extremely complex and time-consuming process. So the red thread, this is an old line my mother used to use, because apparently in the olden days, when people sewed, and some people still sew, but a lot of us don't sew anymore, is that red thread was your basting thread that let you know this is where that edge was to turn up. So the way my mother would put it, she's 95, is that what is that red thread that joins all of those what appear often to be disconnected parts together? Well, it's the competencies. It's a consistent set that goes throughout that process. Provided you start with a set that makes sense during that gap analysis, that is a consistent set that goes across. They are critical elements for you to benchmark and then measure success. Training needs upon. But like essential skills, and we're all getting a little more comfortable with that term, they do change over time, right? That need may increase at various times. Perhaps at one time, and I'll use Ashley, my colleague, as an example, when I brought her in, it was for her research needs, her research skills rather, for a project we were working on. I was looking for someone with just her competencies. But since then, we've had to provide training and experience and opportunity to build in other areas to help me, for example, with financial management. So that will change over time and changes from job to job. And then there's always the question, what's more important, the competencies that people bring with them or the credential? Any thought on that?
I lean more toward competency.
You lean toward competency. Anyone else?
I would say balance.
Yeah, absolutely. Brenda runs a small business. She needs to know that people have a certain amount of education and training and competency according to some sort of credential in an area. But at the same time, as we know in adult literacy, that credential doesn't always mean that much. The reality is you want to see that